Was September an anomaly, or was it just the beginning of the new norm?
Just luck, it's the plan you see, and we build positively.
Hey Commando, welcome back to another episode of Build Positively, the series where we track my month-to-month growth in Marvel Strike Force and use it to build a smarter plan moving forwards. Last month we talked about hitting a pretty rough patch with gold and training materials. The September drought hit hard. Spending felt tighter, progress slowed down, and even with solid event participation, it was tough to stretch resources across all the new character demands. So the big question this month was, did the drought continue into October? Were we able to bounce back, or are we still feeling that pinch? Let's dig into the data and find out. But before we get into the numbers, let's remember the first rule of Build Positively. It's your game. You play it by your rules. If you want to build your favorite Marvel character, even if they're not in the meta, that is totally fine. The key is just understanding the trade-off. Because at its core, Marvel Strike Force is a resource management game. So if you're building one or two characters who are out of the meta, you'll be sacrificing the same resources you could have used to build those meta-relevant teams. The goal of Build Positively isn't to tell you what to build, it's to help you make those decisions with awareness and intent. And that brings us to the practical side of things, because if Marvel Strike Force is a resource management game, then the first step in managing resources is actually knowing what's coming in each month. And that's where my tracking comes in. Every gold orb, every training mat, every power core and every T4 adds up. By looking back at October's totals, we can see exactly how much fuel we have for roster growth and start planning how we're going to start spending smarter in November. So let's break down what the economy actually gave us last month. Quick reminder, links to all the spreadsheets I use are in the description if you want to dive deeper. And first up is antimatter, our current chapter currency. So let's talk about it. For September, we earned 2,657,445 antimatter. And in October, that jumped to 3,381,655 antimatter. That is a huge increase, especially here at the end of this chapter cycle. To put that into perspective, that's enough for about 96 purchases of Gear Tier 20 mini uniques, which works out at roughly 480 Gear Tier 20 pieces, or if you prefer character shards, that is 1,350 shards, enough to take at least one character from 0 to 7 stars if that's where you wanted to spend it. Now we are reaching an important moment. The antimatter store is going to be wrapping up in 7 days. From this point forwards, the amount of antimatter you'll be earning will be minimal, so make sure to spend it before the store disappears. Anything left over will be converted into shop credits, and that's not going to be ideal value. Also worth noting, today marks the launch of the brand new Chapter 3 store. Now I'm not expecting to see purple 4 or 5 ions show up there immediately, but I do want to caution you about overspending your new currency, sigils. You're going to want to keep a healthy stockpile of sigils on hand, just in case those purple ions are added down the line, especially if you're like me and on your journey to Blue Marvel. So here's my advice: if you're post Professor X, hold your sigils for now and wait to see what develops. But if you're not there yet, go ahead and spend what you need to progress. Focus on those Gear Tier 20 pieces that will move your teams for the Professor X saga forwards. Alright, with that covered, let's move into our traditional resources, starting with gold, and this one's a bit of a roller coaster. Looking back over the past few months, things have been up and down. June came in strong at 295 million, dipped a little in July to 243 million, bounced back in August to 339 million, and then September, which was 264 million on paper, though 65 million of that was that secret warrior compensation, bringing the truer total to 199 million. Heading into October, bad news. The drop continues. October's total income landed at 192,355,140, about 7 million less than last month's adjusted figure, even with the 7-day gift code worth 2 million gold per day. Now, if those codes didn't work for you or you missed a few, you could easily be down another 14 million gold on top of that. This isn't looking great. To build a single character to up to where Scopely wants players to, that's level 105 and gear tier 20 from my knowledge, it's costing us about 43 million gold. That means with October's income of 192 million gold, we could only build 4 characters to that level. So not even 5. We've officially dipped below the sustainable thresholds. It's time to tighten our belts, commanders. But before we make any plans for November, let's check in on our other major bottleneck, training materials. And when it comes to training materials, remember, we track each type individually, but the numbers I share here are always converted into their total gold cost. That helps us translate training mats into something every commander can understand. How many characters we can actually build with them. Now, back in June, we bought 315 million golds worth of training materials. July dropped down to around 243 million, and August slipped slightly further to 238 million. Then September ticked back up to 247 million, but that figure also included that 65 million gold worth of compensation from the Secret Warrior calendar. So if we strip that out, the real number for September was closer to 182 million. And that brings us to October, where our total came in at 183,473,350 golds worth of training materials. That's almost identical to last month's true number, only about 1.3 million difference. To put that into perspective, it takes 33,203,180 golds worth of training materials to train a character from level 1 to 105. And that means this month we could have trained about 5.52 characters, down noticeably from what we were seeing back in June, July and August. And honestly, seeing September and October line up this closely, even after stripping out the compensation, tells me this might be the new normal. It's only a 2-month trend so far, but the consistency is hard to ignore. If this holds, we'll need to start adjusting our expectations and preparing our plans around this new baseline. Next up, let's talk about T4s. And in October, we bought 4,231 T4s into our account. And with a single character requiring 840 T4s to fully upgrade all their abilities, that means we're sitting right at the point where we can fully T4 5 characters per month. The numbers haven't shifted recently. We've been holding steady here for a while, but I'm starting to get a little cautious about what might be coming. I've got a feeling we might be losing the spotlight raids sometime soon, and right now that is one of our primary sources of T4s. I am, however, noticing that the command center objectives are awarding more of them, and they're being sprinkled into other areas too. So it looks like Scopely may be preparing to redistribute where the T4s come from rather than outright removing them. Either way, we're keeping a close eye on this because T4s are just as essential as gold and training materials when it comes to maintaining steady roster progress. And moving on to power cores, this continues to be another steady income source. In October, we managed to accrue 21,447 power cores, which is right in line with what we've been seeing the past few months. No big spikes, no major drops. It is important to point out though that a big chunk of those cores come from holding a top 10 spot in Arena. That alone is bringing in 500 power cores per day, and over a month, that really adds up. So if you're wondering why your power core income might look different from mine, that's probably the reason. It's also a great reminder of why Arena matters, not just for keeping up with the current meta teams, but also for that steady flow of resources. Even just being around at your Arena payout time and pushing for a higher rank can make a noticeable difference. Now, with the economy numbers out of the way, let's take a look at the character releases, because that always plays a big part in how our resources get stretched. And October was a pretty busy month if you were a spender. We had new members of the Brimstone team, Delmin Hellstrom, Living Mummy and Hellcat all released. And since it was spooky season, we also had a zombie join the party in the form of Zombie Kestrel. Things weren't much easier for free-to-play players either. We had Hobgoblin and Superior Spider-Man entering our rosters through their free-to-play events, and Phantom Rider joining through the Battle Pass. On top of that, if you were post-Xavier, Damon Hellstrom entered the chapter store, and Living Mummy had a leaderboard event where coring for him made a fair difference, even if you were just sticking to those free-to-play inputs. All in all, that gave us 7 new characters and 2 reworks to work on in October, which is a lot. And something we do always track with the character release schedule is the average days between releases. And in September, the average days between releases for paid characters, so people who buy the characters, was 1 every 10 days. And for free-to-play, we were looking at 22.42 days between each free-to-play release. October has seen a big shift though. The paid release average days has dropped to 9. That is absolutely huge. Knocking that extra day off, it's giving you less time to work on things. And the average days between free-to-play has shifted up to 23.64. And so another day has been added on to that free-to-play release schedule. Looking ahead to November, for the spenders, we're expecting Lady Bullseye, Steel Serpent and Swordmaster, with Blue Marvel unlocks also on the horizon. For free-to-play players, things might be a little calmer. If you didn't core for Living Mummy, you'll likely get his free-to-play event this month. I'm also guessing that Hellcat will have her free-to-play release and will appear in the chapter store. And if you've been following the plan, you'll have either unlocked or be close to unlocking Zombie Kestrel. I don't see any free-to-play events coming for the Immortal Warriors just yet, so that'll probably be it for November. Now, if you follow Build Positively for a while, you know we've worked off of the theory that we earn gold and training materials a month in hand, meaning what we earn in October would fuel builds for November. But honestly, that theory's starting to fall apart. Just look at it from a big spender's perspective. With Blue Marvel and 5 Immortal Weapon characters, that's 6 characters to build in 1 month, with only 5 characters worth of resources coming in from October. So I think it's finally time to put that theory to bed, because the math just isn't lining up anymore. So now that we know what characters we are working with and what characters we need to plan for, let's move into our character building strategy section. And as always, we're starting with the car showroom. I like to compare characters in Marvel Strike Force to buying a new car. When you buy a new car and drive off the forecourt, its value immediately starts to depreciate. It's exactly the same in Marvel Strike Force. The moment a character is released into the game, their value starts to drop. And what I mean by that is this. When a character is brand new, they usually offer a big advantage in certain PvP modes. They're shiny, powerful, and not everyone knows how to counter them yet. But that advantage doesn't last forever. Counters appear, teams evolve, and before long, that character isn't quite as dominant. Now for us free-to-play players, that's not really a bad thing. We're almost always about a month behind unless you're coring every new release, and by the time we unlock them, the counters are already out there in the wild, which means we can make smarter decisions about where to invest. That said, it's still important not to sit on your laurels. The faster you can build up the characters you do unlock, the more useful they'll be in modes like Cosmic Crucible and Alliance War, where their power is going to directly contribute to your alliance's progress or your own progress. Now let's talk about how we actually manage that building process. Up until now, we've been following what I call the 10-day strategy. On day 1, we were building a new character from level 1 to 105, and then over the next 8 days, we would work on post-Ares characters, taking them from level 100 to 103 or 103 to 105, depending on where they were sitting. And day 10 was always a rest day. This setup works nicely because it aligns with the average 30-day month, 3 full build cycles per month, and also matches the typical 10-day cadence between paid character releases. So it scales for all player types. But here's the thing. With the October resource totals we just looked at, it's clear that both gold and training material income can no longer keep up with that pace. So it is time for a new plan. Going forward, we are going to be shifting to a team-focused 6-day cycle. For me this month, as a free-to-play player, that focus is going to be Brimstone, since most of their new members are going to be unlocking in November. So here is how it's going to work. On day 1, I'm going to take a character up to level 80. Day 2, I'm going to take a character to level 90. Day 3, level 95. Day 4, level 100. Day 5, level 103. And day 6, level 105. The reason for the 6-day rotation is simple. It still gives us a clean 30-day cycle across the month, but it's going to keep our spending under control. This approach won't grow your roster as fast as before, but it ensures stability. You won't overspend your gold or trainer materials, and you'll still see steady progress. Once you've built up a little surplus, you can always reach back to work on an older character or squeeze in an extra build here and there. But the key here, Commander, is going to be balance. We want consistent growth, not burnout. All right, now that we've talked strategy, let's take a quick look at what I plan to build in October and then compare that to what actually happened. Because if there's one thing this series teaches us every month, it's that even the best plans can change once we see how the numbers fall. So here's what I had originally planned for October. Hobgoblin was going to go from 1 to 105 for our Insidious 6. The full Undying team, Iron Man Zombie, Juggernaut Zombie, Scarlet Witch Zombie, and Hela, each going from level 100 to 105. Superior Spider-Man was going from level 1 to 105 for the Insidious 6. Zombie Kestrel, who I was hoping was going to be unlocked in October, would have gone from 100 to 105 for the Undying team. And then Elsa Bloodstone and Doctor Strange Heartless were going to be my other works for getting the Brimstone team underway. Now that would have been 9 characters, totaling just over 192 million golds worth of training materials and upgrades. A big month. But as we've seen, our economy didn't quite support that much spending. So what did we actually do in October? We started strong with Hobgoblin, bringing him all the way up to level 105 and gear tier 19 over several days. Then I pivoted to the Superior 6, focusing on those characters Spider Slayer, Green Goblin Classic, Dr. Octopus, Lizard and Mysterio, each gradually pushed up to level 105. After that, we circled back to our Undying team, finishing out Zombie Juggernaut, Zombie Scarlet Witch and Hela as well. Now you might have noticed one name missing there, which was Zombie Iron Man, and that's intentional. Even though I've got him at 7 yellow stars, his red stars are only at 2. And because he's a dark promotion credit character, I just don't earn enough of those to justify taking him any higher right now. That said, it really doesn't matter in his case, because Zombie Iron Man is a kit-based character. He's not relying on his stats to do his job. His strength comes from what is built into his kit. And with his ISO 8 set as Skirmisher, that extra focus ensures he lands those debuffs and does everything that I need him to do at level 100 gear tier 19 just as effectively as he would have at level 105. So instead of forcing resources into those marginal stat gains, I've chose to hold back. And that's exactly the kind of conscious resource decision we want to make while building positively. Overall, the month has lent more into roster refinement than full new builds, rounding out the Superior 6, locking in the key members of the Undying team, And I even managed to push Doctor Strange Heartless towards completion as we prepare for the Brimstone focus heading into November. And honestly, that's the kind of flexibility I need to keep moving forwards in this new, tighter resource economy. Even when gold and training materials aren't flowing like they used to, we can still make meaningful progress by adjusting our priorities and timings. Now, before we move into our November planning, let's take a quick look at where we are sitting right now in terms of stored resources, because understanding your surplus is just as important as tracking your income. For training materials, we are currently sat on 7,415 green, 36,724 blue, 14,862 purple, and 329 gold. Altogether, that works out to about 125 million golds worth of training materials in reserve. That's actually about 6 million up from last month. Not a huge gain, but still an increase, which is always good to see. On the gold side, though, things are looking a little tighter. We're sitting at 72 million gold, which is a 10 million gold decrease from last month. That drop, combined with the training material surplus, really reinforces that we need to readjust our strategy. The balance between income and spending just isn't matching our old pace anymore. As for power cores, we're currently holding 17,100, which is about 2,000 less than last month. But this month, I want to talk a bit about how my power core strategy is changing moving forwards. I'm no longer going to core for new characters that show up, not unless they directly help with a leaderboard event in a meaningful way. For example, in October, we had the Curse of Eternity milestone, where unlocking Living Mummy and using him in Blitz gave you 5,000 points. That was the equivalent of 50 times the other free-to-play daily input. In a case like that, it made perfect sense to spend the power cores to unlock him early. But outside of those kind of events, I'm keeping things lean. My power cores will now only go towards my daily energy refreshes 4 times a day at 50 cores each for my campaign energy, and everything else is going to be banked. The goal here is simple. Build up a solid reserve of cores so we can capitalize on those high value leaderboard events when they appear, instead of draining our resources for minor advantages. It's all about spending with intent, not impulse. And now it's time for Howard the Duck's motto of the month. And this month's quote comes from Mary Pickford, who said, "You may have a fresh start any moment you choose. For this thing that we call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down." And for me, that one really hits home this month. Build positively has been my mantra since I started this series. But I'll be honest, this month, it's felt like I failed. The account is sitting lower than I thought it would be. Our income has dipped. Our builds are having to slow. And for a moment, it was easy to look at that and think, maybe this isn't working anymore. But that's not what failure is. Failure isn't the fall. It's the staying down. And that's not what we're doing here. We're not giving up on Build Positively or the mantra that started it all. We're doing exactly what Mary Pickford said. We're having a fresh start. We're adjusting, learning, and building smarter, because that's what Build Positively has always been about. Progression, not perfection. All right, let's take a look at the proposed build plan for November. And this one really embodies our fresh start mindset. We're sticking with our team-focused approach, and this month that focus is all about Brimstone, while finishing off a couple of key characters from last month to keep things tidy. Here's how the schedule is looking. 1st of November, we are going to finish Doctor Strange Heartless, taking him to level 105. November the 2nd is when I unlock Zombie Kestrel, and she is going directly to level 105, gear tier 20. That is 33.2 million golds worth of training materials. Then I intend to have a rest day. From there, we're looking at building up Elsa Bloodstone, Damon Hellstrom, and Living Mummy. And hopefully, by the end of the month, we will have a Hellcat free-to-play event, which means we will have her unlocked and we'll be able to start leveling her. But we do want to make sure that we get those rest days in at the end of the month. So from the 28th to the 30th of November, that is it. Now, there's something important to mention here. Zombie Kestrel will actually be the last character I am going to directly take to level 105. With how the game's economy is shifting, I need to start moving away from automatically maxing every new addition, and instead, the plan from here on out is to build characters intelligently to the level that gives us the most value for the least cost based on their role, synergy, and current meta impact. We've also intentionally built those 4 rest days into the schedule. That gives us a chance to reassess the landscape, see how our resources are trending, and make sure we're staying ahead rather than overspending. The total training cost for November comes in at around 170 million gold worth of training mats, which fits within our new, more sustainable 6-build cycle. This plan keeps us moving forwards while giving us the flexibility to adjust if things shift again, because part of Build Positively is knowing when to push and when to pause. So that wraps up our October recap and our plans moving into November. This month hasn't been easy. We've seen the economy continue to tighten. We've had to adjust our expectations. And honestly, there were moments where it felt like progress had slowed to a crawl. But that's the reality of Marvel Strike Force right now. And it's exactly why Build Positively exists. Because when things get tough, when the gold runs dry and the training mats don't stretch as far as they used to, that's when it matters most to take a step back, reassess, and build smarter, not faster. We've laid out a new plan, a sustainable, team-focused approach that fits the current state of the game. We're not going to be chasing every shiny new release, and we're not trying to keep up with the spenders. We're focused on steady progress, on building with intention, and making sure every resource spent pushes our account forwards. Remember, Build Positively has never been about having the biggest roster or the flashiest teams. It's about momentum, mindset, and managing what you've got to get where you want to go. And like Mary Pickford said, failure isn't falling down, it's staying down. This month we fell a little, but we're going to get back up and we're starting fresh. Now, if you found this video helpful or motivating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel and it lets me keep making content like this for you. And if you want to keep the conversation going, come and hang out in the Jetson Squad Discord. Link is down in the description down below. And if you want to know how to build your teams and make the most out of your roster, these videos right here might help.